I understand the next call is a split call. Chris Farfoy.
It is. Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, for the chance to speak to the Prisoners and Victims Claims Continuation and Reform Amendment Bill. As my colleague, the Honourable Leanne Dalziel, stated at the end of her speech, this is a bill that we will support, but it is with some considerable amount of reservation. We are supporting it because, in essence, it is a continuation of a piece of legislation that the Honourable Phil Goff saw through this House in 2005, and my colleague Andrew Little said it was a measure taken because of community unease of what had happened in a particular case where a prisoner had got some compensation and that should have been passed on to the victim of his crime. And at the time, the Minister of Justice, Phil Goff, said most people believe it is wrong that offenders should be compensated for wrongful treatment, but in turn are not required to pay restitution to the victims they harmed. Good words from a very good Member of Parliament, I should add. But I think this goes to the very heart of the Kiwi sense of a fair go, in that if you get ripped off and someone has the ability to compensate you, then you should get that compensation. But our reservation with this bill comes around a commitment made by the government to consult the rest of Parliament and to have a review around the functionality of this legislation. And this bill that is before us now basically makes permanent the sunset clause that has been rolled over, I think, 3 times since the 2005 legislation has been put in. And the purpose of that sunset clause, as Mr Goff has mentioned, was to ensure that there was a review to make sure that this system has been working. And the member from the government side of the House, Alfred Ngaro, said that there was a balance to this piece of legislation, and in a very narrow sense that might be true. But in a broader sense, as Mr Goff has said, to see if this sense of fairness across the board is working, we believe that a review should be taken when not just victims of mistreatment in prisons were getting some windfall gain, but also other inmates, other prisoners who are being incarcerated, had the ability to compensate. Because, as I said before, if someone rips you off and you have the ability to compensate them, then those people should get that compensation. So we believe there should have been a review. We understood that the government was going to undertake a review. I believe at the last time that the sunset clause was pushed out by another year or so, and we were told that there was going to be a period of consultation where we could talk about what would be captured in that review. And as Mr Goff said, in that review we would have liked to have looked at the issue where some people who have kind of dallied in white-collar crime, who have been able to sit on rather large amounts of money, while their victims are looking at their bank accounts and their life savings and seeing very little there. And whether or not that should be captured by this bill in terms of being able to get them compensation. So it is absolutely unfair and a break of a commitment from the government to say that a review should not be held in the benefit of those people who are looking at this saying, well, if they can get compensation, why can't we get compensation when someone has ripped us off and is sitting on a huge nest egg but we can't get our hands on it? So why can't the government in this piece of legislation be true to its promise about caring about victims of whatever crime it may be, whether it be an act against the person or against their bank accounts, and broaden this, hold a review and broaden their scope around the victims' rights and their ability for compensation. We've seen that hasn't happened. It should happen. It's a break of a commitment, and while we support this legislation, we do it with reservation because the government says it's on the side of victims, but in this case it has not been.
Call Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise